So, um, so some of you I know are used to working with intuition and other, forms of intuition. And then when you jump into CRV, um, it's a little odd at first, and it takes a little getting used to. And I'm going to baby you right through that process because I've been there, I've done it. I know what special challenges you guys will have in making that leap. And those of you who don't have a lot of experience working with intuition probably have an easier go of it because you don't have bad habits to unlearn or anything like that. So it may actually be easier for some of you. And those who are used to working with intuition, when I first started learning CRV, the first class was a little overwhelming, which is why I love that we record this so you can watch it again and listen to it again. And you guys can stop me and you can ask questions if you get confused about anything. I don't want you to sit there quietly if something's confusing you. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page going forward. For me, I was working with my intuition for a long time before I got formally trained in CRV, and I was doing quite well. And so people asked me, why bother? What's the point? And I said, well, it kind of felt like somebody handed me the keys to a Porsche. So that's why I bother with it. So it really is a powerful tool. And it's super fun, and I hope that I do it justice and convey the love I have for it, because I got hooked once I started learning. I was totally hooked. But I hope you guys will find it super fun as much as I do. And let me pull up the PowerPoint. There are way too many windows open. Okay. Which took me why it took me so long to get back on. Okay. I guess I didn't even have to do that. What happened? Did I lose you guys?
Now we're here.
Okay. I just can't see you. Good. Okay. Somehow I got lost. Oh my gosh. Okay. I cannot see you guys.
We're here. We're here. Trust it. We're here.
There you are. There you are. Phew. Okay. I was having a meltdown there for a moment. Okay. All right. There you are. I can't share the screen unless I can see it. Okay. All right. Phew. Okay. Now. Okay. We're recording. We've got the PowerPoint going. I can see you. All is well. Okay. So I'm going to talk a lot tonight. I'm going to throw a lot at you. If you have questions, I really want you to yell or something. I can't see all of you because I can only see some of you. So if you have questions or you're confused about anything, please stop me so that I can clarify. But again, this is why we record, so that you guys will be able to watch this again if you need a refresher. Okay, so controlled remote viewing. First off, make sure you're in your right class. This is what you signed up for.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
You did sign up for this, right?
I think so.
Okay.
To go back and look.
Okay, good. So far, so good. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the deep background of CRV, there are so many books out there and so many resources and so many things you can dive down into a big rabbit hole to learn about CRV. You know, I am partial to IRVA, um, so the International Remote Viewing Association, irva.org. If you go to irva.org, you can find the timeline. You can find a lot of the history. You can find all of the, not all of them, but the ones that have been released. We have a whole archive of documents from the CIA and all those sessions that were done in secret and all of those cool things. So there's a lot out there. This is just a really basic overview I'm going to give you. I know these people really well. They're all have become friends of mine. If you don't know, I'm former president of IRVA. I'm currently vice president of IRVA. I've been speaking at IRVA conferences since, oh gosh, 2000, I think, was my first IRVA conference. That's scary right there. So I've been involved in the remote viewing world for 20 years. My own personal training, I've had at least 200 classroom hours of remote viewing training. First, I trained with Lynn Buchanan, then I trained with Lori Williams, and then I went on to train with Paul Smith. So I've had a pretty rounded experience, and I have tried to take the approach that I think is the easiest to use, the most likely to have you be successful. And you know, I'm not a Ingo purist, but it is more in line with Ingo's way of Ingo Swan's way of teaching. So that's my background, and I will tell you this story because I like to tell this story in every one of my beginning CRV classes, because I had dabbled with remote viewing. I'd done practice targets. I'd played with it a lot before I was formally trained, and got super frustrated because what I thought I was seeing wasn't what I was seeing. And I thought, well, this makes no sense. Why would I even do this? And then Lynn Buchanan said, stop messing around, come to my class and get yourself trained. And when Lynn Buchanan tells you to do that, you do that. So I will never forget this moment ever. And it changed my life. And I tell Lynn this story all the time. But you know, we were at a conference in Vegas, and we're going to do our training after. I don't ever recommend doing a full week of CRV training after a conference, but anyway, my brain was a little tired, but we'd rented a room in the hotel for him to teach, and it happened to be above the pool. So there was music thumping really loud and people partying down at the pool. And we're in this classroom, and Lynn decides she's going to go up to the whiteboard and do a live demonstration for us of what CRV is. And he had a whole stack of manila envelopes, and someone in class just randomly chose one of those envelopes, and they read a number off to him, which, you know, I knew was a coordinate. They read this number off to him. He stood up there, and the person who was monitoring him said, you know, Lynn, is that music going to bother you? And he says, he's standing there with a felt marker and a whiteboard, and he says, nah. And then he starts doing his thing. He starts, you know, going through stage 1, stage 2 process. And I think they started passing the photograph around so we could look at it. And I'm sitting there totally stunned as he starts describing this target. um, like I said, music thumping in the background. He didn't meditate. He didn't do anything. He's just standing there describing perfectly this target. And so I was like, I don't know what you just did, but you got my full attention going forward. So, so with that,
Wow.
it totally, it totally changed my whole perception of how you work and have to work and all of that. So it was pretty cool. It was very cool to see that happen. Okay, so brief history. Oh, you know, a fun thing to do if you're interested in the history part of CRV is to watch Third Eye Spies. So Russell Targ, one of my colleagues, he worked on this movie for so many years. So it's called Third Eye Spies. It was on Netflix. It was available on Netflix, so I'm not positive it's still up there. But that's where it was originally. So Third Eye Spies gives you the whole history. It's really a cool movie. So I do recommend that if you're interested. Okay. I'm in there too, but I'm hidden in a mask before masks were cool. All right. It was a precog thing. All right. Okay, so in 1972, reports started filtering out from the USSR that psychic research was being taken seriously for intelligence gathering. So the US intelligence decided to look into psychic research in order to not fall behind. So they realized that the USSR was using psychics to spy on us, and we decided, oh my gosh, we better learn how to spy on them back. So that's really how that's really how the program got started. Um, the CIA approached scientists at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, who was eventually tasked with coming up, here's the important part, coming up with a repeatable, reliable method or psychic technique that could be used for intelligence and taught. And that's what they did. For over 2 decades, experiments and development by Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff continued at SRI in secret. They trained the military in 1985 with the method they had developed with the help of psychic Ingo Swann. The program ran from 1972 through 1995. Okay, so 23 years and $20 million. I don't want to harp on this part of it, but the reason I bring this up is because 23 years and $20 million. They put a lot of time and effort and money into this, understanding how the subconscious mind works, how psychic function works, and how this thing called CRV works. So they kind of know what they're talking about. All right. So these are some of the different programs that floated through from the beginning through the life of secret CRV. Sorry, you'll hear some of, they got cut off. So you'll hear some of these names, Gondola Wish, Grill Flame, Center Lane. I don't know what that absorb thing, Lagoon Absorb, Sunstreak, and Stargate. You'll hear a lot about Sunstreak, Stargate, Center Lane. Those are pretty common. You'll hear them talk about those. They were, you know, passed around to different departments, the Army, the DIA, and CIA. So So it was used, and these different organizations continued to fund the program, so it jumped around a little bit. Okay. Everybody so good so far? Okay, like I said, if you really want the timeline and the characters and all the stuff, you know, I do recommend you go to the IRVA website and do some digging around in the timeline and the history. Okay, so so it's broken down. CRV is broken down into 6 stages, the 6 that we teach. And in this class, we're going 1 through 3. And in the intermediate advanced class, we'll go 4, 5, and 6. So 1 through 3 is what we are going to do in this class. Admittedly, stage 1 is the most rule-based. I trudged through it, I have to admit. I trudged through it a little bit. It's not my favorite. But it's, I will say this about stage 1. Everything that they do has a reason for it. So this program is not designed structure. People who roll their eyes and go, oh my God, I hate structure. Structure, especially free flowing, you know, intuitive types tend to revolt against the structure. But the structure is there to help you. The structure is there for you to lean on. The structure exists because it works. Okay? So it took me a long time, 15 years, not that long, but it took me a long time to get around my own resistance to the structure. But the structure, honestly, is there for you, to help you, to support you. It is not there to bog you down and frustrate you, to bog you down and frustrate you. So the structure is there for a reason, because it works. The second thing I want you to know about the structure is that every single thing that you do for a specific reason. So none of this is just crazy. There's a method to the madness. And if you are interested in becoming a professional viewer and actually working for any of these companies that do hire remote viewers, you're expected to know the basic form. There's sort of a standardized way of doing sessions in this industry. And so I'm teaching you in a way so that you will have very nice structure, and it's standardized, and anybody could hire you because your sessions are going to be beautiful. Now, in the first week, I am going to give you a little target, but I have to say, you know, I could care less if you hit the target or not. What I'm going to care about is your structure. And so I am going to pick your structure apart, not because I'm picking on you, but if you learn a bad habit and you continue that bad habit, it'll stay with you forever. So I can't let that happen. So I am a stickler for making sure that your structure's good going forward. And like I said, I could care less if you hit your first target. I really could. I just want to make sure that you're understanding the structure and you're doing it properly, and you don't learn bad habits and then go, Pam taught me. We don't want that to happen. So, so we want to make sure you guys understand the structure, you get it down. It's going to feel strange to you at first. It's going to feel strange to you at first. And it's going to seem like I'm speaking a foreign language half the time. Once you get used to it, it becomes like second nature. You don't have to think it. It's kind of like walking, you know, once you get used to it, you don't have to think about it all the time. It's kind of that way. It's weird in the beginning and you have to think through every single step. But really, the more you practice, the more you do it, it becomes second nature, and you don't have to think so hard when you're moving through those steps. Okay, still so far so good. Nobody ran away. Nobody ran away yet. Somebody told me the first time they took remote viewing, they said it was kind of like joining the military to learn how to fold your underwear. I'm like, that's kind of an apt description. But it does require time. Those of you who are used to working with your intuition will be a little surprised at the time it takes to do a session. It goes a little bit slower. So it goes slower and you use a lot of paper. Okay. Some people don't like to use the paper, and I've had a student in class that had a whiteboard, and he would do each page, he would do his thing on the whiteboard and then take a picture of it, and then he would erase it and then do his next page and take a picture on the whiteboard. And so you have that option. I'm old school. I prefer doing it on paper still. We'll talk about why as we move through, but there's magic in the doing it on paper. So I still recommend that method. Once you learn it and get good at it, then you can probably experiment and jump into whiteboards and other things. Some people even have like iPad programs where you can do on the iPad and stuff. And it's super easy. You don't have to scan your pages and all of that. But I think that there's some value in learning how to do it on paper and getting the magic that comes with using paper. So we'll talk about that as we go. Okay, so I love this example because this is a realistic what a session might look like. Because what happens is your brain, your subconscious mind will grab onto something and try to make sense of it. And so in this one, I love that it looked at this and went, that looks like fingers. It must be a hand coming out of a cloud. This makes no sense, but I'm going to draw a hand coming out of a cloud. And then some sort of energy, they call it motion energy, some sort of energy going up from the ground. So they drew this motion energy going up into a explosion. So this is a pretty cool example of what a real target actually might come out looking like on paper. Okay, if you're lucky. Okay. So stage one is broken down into a bunch of stages in and of itself. Okay, so we're going to go through each one of these as we move through stage one. Cool down, page preparation, the coordinate, gestalts, and ideograms. See, I told you I'd start saying weird words. Okay. Okay, the cool down. So those of you who are used to working with intuition probably already have something that you do to get yourself quiet and receptive and ready to work. It can be anything. So, you know, Paul Smith listens to rock music. That's his cool down. Some people prefer to meditate or exercise, or me, just sit there for a couple minutes and go, let's do this thing. Whatever your mode is to get yourself calm and quiet and into a receptive mode. The reason I have this picture of this woman meditating at her desk is because I do think it's a good idea to do the cool down where you're going to do the work. so that once you're cooled down and ready to go, you can just pick up your pen and go, instead of, um, trying to get yourself organized and shuffle around and find your supplies and all of that. So it makes more sense to be ready at your desk, have your paper, have your pen, be ready to go, then do your cool down, get yourself quiet, um, and then um, and then you'll be ready to start working. So we don't, the difference between CRV and psychic work is you're not going to sit around with your eyes closed in a dark room. You're going to be at a desk or a table or someplace you can write, and conscious while you're working. So it's a different way of working. Okay. I highly recommend you set positive intentions for yourself. Tell your subconscious, tell yourself you can do this. I can do this. It's important, because if you don't think you can do it, if you think that you're terrible, that's gonna manifest for you. So be sure and talk nicely to your subconscious and remind yourself that you're all knowing and you can absolutely do this. Okay. And then, like I said, whatever form you want to take, listening to music or exercising, meditate, whatever you want to do, just to get yourself quiet and ready. I will say this. Life's not perfect, and sometimes we have to do sessions when we don't want to, or we're not ready, or we have distractions going on in our lives and things like that. We have a whole process to help us set aside all these different things. But I will say that if there's something you can just deal with it before you sit down to do your session. Like if there's something really bothering you, just take care of it. That way it's not nagging at you. You can just be free of it. So, oh my gosh, I don't know if I paid that bill. I don't know if I paid, well, just go pay the bill. Then you'll be, more mentally, you'll be more mentally free to do your session. So if there is something urgent or pressing or bothering you or something, and you can take care of it, just take care of it, so that it's not pulling at your attention. Okay. All right. Page preparation. So this always reminds me of like when we were in grade school and you had to write all the stuff at the top right hand corner of your page. So, like I said, if someone's going to hire you, they expect you to know how to do this. They expect you to know how to label your paper properly. So, obviously, you're going to start with your name. Now, I've worked on cases that were sensitive before, and they didn't use my name, so they gave each viewer a secret number, and you had a viewer number, and then instead of putting your name there, you put your viewer number. But you guys don't have a viewer number, so you're going to use your name. So I know who you are in class. Okay. Then you're going to write the coordinate, and you're thinking, where do I get the coordinate? The coordinate, which I will explain here, is something I give you. So this is a number that I manufacture and that I give you as a connection to the target. It's kind of like a phone number or an IP address that's going to take you to the target. It's got nothing to do with the target. There's no hints in there. So some people like to analyze the number. It's the date backwards, okay? Generally, it's the date backwards. We do that for bookkeeping reasons to make it easy on ourselves. So there's nothing special about the number that's going to give you any kind of a hint about what's in the target. So let go of that idea. Don't try to analyze it. Um, if I add some numbers or my initial or something like that, I'm just doing that to differentiate it from all the other people out there assigning a target on the same date. So I don't know if that's an issue, but I just like to make mine very unique just in case. So, so there's no hint about the target whatsoever in the coordinate. It's a number that I create, and it just always think of it as like a phone number to help you dial up the target. So think of it as a phone number. It's going to lead you to the target. Okay. Everybody so good? Good so far? Okay.
Pam,
Yes.
am I supposed to be seeing something on the screen? I don't
Are
see
you
a
serious? You don't see the screen?
I don't. So, but that's why I just didn't want to go any further without mentioning that. So, should it be, it says Pam Coronado has started screen sharing, but
Uh-huh.
I don't see anything. So,
That's
um,
not good.
I was wondering. So,
Everybody else can see it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonder why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me try and figure it out. Yeah, but I don't want to stop the class or anything.
Okay.
Well,
You'll
the
be
good
able
thing
to,
is you can watch the recording.
yeah, you'll see it on the recording.
Exactly.
That's
Right,
kind of
right.
a bummer because it's kind of good to see what's going on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It would be
Sorry.
a little confusing not to be able to see what's going on. Okay. Yeah, hopefully you can get that sorted out because it's definitely up there and everybody can see it.
Okay.
All right. Next, it says monitor or alone. Mostly you guys are going to be working alone at home, so you don't have to write anything there. But if you did have a monitor, you had somebody that was helping you, you would write their name there. The date, the time. We normally use military time just because this was created in military term. So generally we do use military time. I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't. And now we get to the interesting part. Okay, POCA, POCD, and set-asides. So what in the heck? They like to use a lot of acronyms. So you can take notes here. So POCA. And I'm going to tell you these next three things, POCA, POCD, and set-asides. These are designed to free your mind. They're designed to clear the decks so that you can start your session with a blank slate. And that's what this process is all about, is clearing the decks, getting all this stuff out of your psyche so that you have a clean deck to start from. Okay, so POCA stands for Preview of Coming Attractions. Preview of coming attractions. Now, those of you who work with me already and are using your intuition, listen to me very carefully. I'll repeat this, but listen to me very carefully right here. Psychic students get POCAs and think they're getting a head start on the target. No. I don't want you to think of it that way. And I used to have a kid in class who would list all kinds of stuff here. And I'm like, you're spending more time on your pre-thing than you are in your session. Preview of coming attractions means all of a sudden, I already think that there's a mountain. I think there's a mountain. You're going to write mountain, POCA mountain. And you are going to think, oh my gosh, I've already got a hint about the target. I'm telling you, that's going to wreak havoc on the rest of your session. If you don't let go of it, if you don't just let go of it. It could be right, usually it's not. And then the one time I had one student, she's like, well, it was right once. I'm like, yeah, but it was wrong the other 9 times. So you don't want to get married to this POCA. The idea of these 3 things is to let them go so that you're starting completely free and clear. So you don't want to hang on to something that comes in out of structure. We call it out of structure. So anything that comes up early while you're not working yet and it just pops in, or you're thinking about the target, what it might be, and you have an idea, nope, you're going to write it right there, POCA, and you're going to let it go. If I was a good singer, I'd sing that song from Frozen, but I'm not. So,
So
really,
Pam, excuse me, did you say, so you do note it down, but then
yeah,
you just let it go? Okay, so you do note it.
it's
Okay.
important to note it. In fact,
Okay.
it's very important to note it, because what happens is you guys will keep secrets and you'll hang on to stuff because you didn't let it go and write it down. So we want everything that happens in your head to end up on paper.
So is it like you would write, is it, so there's this list on the left column, right?
Yeah.
And it could go 1 page, it could go 2 page,
It could go a
and
whole
you
thing.
say, mountain POCA.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't want you to get a whole string of stuff, because that's a bad habit. I want you to, I don't want you to try to get stuff. Like, we don't want you getting stuff out of session, out of structure, but some people just do.
I
Some
see.
people just get preview of previews. So you may get green, you may get whatever, water. I think there's water, I think there's green. So write down water or green, whatever it was that you saw. And then we're gonna erase it, right? You're not gonna erase it, but it mentally, you're gonna just let it go. Because if you think, oh gosh, I just got a head start, this is awesome, then you're gonna emotionally get attached to that, and it's going to wreak havoc on the rest of your session. Okay, so POCA, preview of coming attractions, anything that pops in before you have started your session formally. We're gonna write it down, let it go. And you'll hear me talk about that, because I'll know if you didn't. I'll see it come up in your session. POCD is a little different. Preview of coming distractions. Preview of coming distractions. So this is anything that you're anticipating. You're anticipating a call. You're anticipating the dog barking. You're anticipating some sort of distraction. Anything like that, you can just declare it and then let that go. So I'm worried about, the dog barking and disturbing me. I'm worried about the doorbell ringing. I'm worried about whatever, important phone call coming and disturbing me. So a lot of people especially who do psychic work, tend to think that once you get into session, you don't want to get interrupted because it's hard to get back in. Like, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to get interrupted because it took me all this energy to get into the session. Remote viewing is different. It's a lot easier to hop in and out of a session. So you don't have to worry about that. So you don't have to stress. I know, it's cool. You don't have to stress about, oh my gosh, I'm going to get interrupted and I'll never get back in. It doesn't work that way. It's really a lot easier to hop in and out of session. POCD, anything that you're afraid of is going to come and disturb you. That's what you put in there. And the last one is set-asides. SA, set-asides. This can be anything that is taking up emotional or mental space for you. So you could just write private if you don't want to write it. But, you know, a lot of people will say performance anxiety or feeling rushed, or, you know, I had a fight with my roommate and I'm upset, or whatever, I'm hungry, whatever is going on. Anything that's taking up emotional or mental space, you want to address it. This is important. So I like to think of, like, I'm going to put all that stuff in a box and put it up on a shelf. And the way that I do that is tell myself, you know, if I had a fight with somebody and I'm upset, nothing's going to change in the next half hour if I take time out and do a session. The world's not going to stop spinning if I take my time and do a session. So if it is urgent, like I said, generally deal with it before you start your session. Now, if you promise your subconscious to set something aside and you'll deal with it later, make sure you deal with it later so you don't lie to yourself, because your subconscious won't believe you next time. It'll be like, you promised and then you didn't. And you'll have a harder time setting things aside. But generally for me, I really am trying to create a space for myself. Just a quiet little block of time where I'm emotionally and mentally committed to my session. And maybe I'm upset about something, maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm hungry. I'm just going to set all that aside and focus. And
Pam, if you're doing this professionally, I mean, how explicit do you get? Do you actually hand that stuff in?
I do. I don't, you know, I won't say, you know, I had a fight with a roommate or whatever, but I will say private. I will write private if it's
okay.
personal like that. But I will write performance anxiety or feeling rushed or have a headache or something like that. I will write that generally so that they can see that I'm struggling with some confidence issues. Okay. So those three steps are important because, like I said, anything that's taking up emotional or mental space can pull you away or pull you off of being able to really focus on your session. So we want to sort of clear the decks, completely clear the decks, so that you're ready to go and stay focused on your session. Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So back to the POCA part, like you said, you're gonna get this mental picture like right off. I mean,
You might.
that happens to me. So how do you like distinguish if it's, you know, that
It's
or
not.
if
So
it's not?
It's bad. It's not.
It's just not.
It's not. We're gonna rule it as it's bad. It's not.
Okay.
Yep. We're not even gonna pretend it might be right. We're gonna.
Okay.
It's nope. It's bad. It's not. Okay. Yep. Because you guys are gonna want to do that. You're gonna want to hang on to it, and I don't
Yep.
want you to hang on to it.
Okay.
Okay. Whoop. I forgot the target part. Back. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Target. So in this class, this is front loading. It says target is the location. Describe the location. I don't give you guys front loading in this class. Front loading is just is a word that means anything you know about a target before you start working on it. Anything that you know about a target before you start working on it is called front loading. So there's good front loading and disastrous front loading. This is good front loading. This is the way it's done. But until you learn to work, I'd rather not give you any front loading for now. It's kind of like if you don't have a safety rope, you have nothing to grab onto. You have to grab onto your intuition because you got nothing. And that's the way that works. So I prefer to not give front loading in this class until you guys get a little stronger in working without it. I loved, in the beginning, I found it really stressful, and I learned to love it. I love working with no front loading because it's kind of like free falling. And I find it more relaxing because I don't have this pressure of, oh my gosh, this is what they want from me and I have to give it. It's more like, I'm just going to see where this takes me, and I'm just going to go where it goes, and I'm just going to enjoy the process, and I'm just going to get what I get. And I don't feel as much pressure myself when I don't have any front loading. I'm a lot more open to just allowing it to be whatever it is. And I have found through doing this work as much as I have that the more times you do that and you find that it works, the more you'll trust the system, the more you'll just lean in and trust the system, because you'll be like, ah, that was really cool. This works. And then you'll allow yourself to just trust the coordinates and go with it and fly blind and have fun with that. That's the goal. Okay. But you will write on your paper after you've put your header, all your header stuff, which could easily take up half of a page. You're going to drop down on the left, and then you're going to write your coordinate. Now, make sure it goes underneath all this stuff. Some people want to sneak it up here at the top because they don't want to waste paper. So one of the first rules in remote viewing is you always move down the page. You continue to move down the page, always, always moving down the page. So make sure that after you do your header, you start your coordinate, it's below the header over on your left.
Isn't the coordinate also beneath your name?
Yes. Yep.
So, okay. So coordinate there, and then like a new page.
There, but here we're going to work with it.
Okay.
So over here, when it gets over here, that means we're going to go.
Okay.
You'll see where this goes in a second. So this is just a review of what's coming. Okay. I used to include stage 4 in this class, and I don't anymore. So stages 1 through 3. Stage one is the Gestalt, which we're getting to. Stage 2 is where you start pulling in perceptions. Stage 3 is where you start sketching and getting dimensionals. And then stage 4 is a series of complex columns. A series of columns for more complex type perceptions. So that's for later. But for here, we are going to get through stage 3. First steps in stage 1. Your cool down, prepare your paper, you're going to do your ideogram, and then you're going to do your gestalts. So what in the world am I talking about? Okay. All right, the ideogram. So those of you that have any background or knowledge of remote viewing or the remote viewing community or world will know that there's a major battle going on about the right way to do ideograms. There's 2 schools of thought, and I've tried them both, And the first one kept me from progressing in stage 1. I never got through stage 1 because I couldn't get through the ideogram. And once I realized that there was a different way, it changed everything for me. It was a total game changer. And so that's the way I teach it. And so I'm doing that on purpose to give you guys an easier go so that you don't get hung up on ideograms the way that I did. This is the Paul Smith, Ingo Swan method that I'm teaching you guys. So what's an ideogram? It's a weird looking doodle, okay? And it happens spontaneously. It's a 1 second doodle. It's a 1 second doodle, 1 second doodle of the target. So I've come to think of it as a zip file that you download and open later. That's how I've come to think of the ideogram. So it's sort of like the entire target exists within that ideogram, and we're gonna unzip it. And your subconscious knows what the target is. So your subconscious mind knows what the target is. And it's going to present that information in your ideogram, and you're going to unzip this as we go through the stages. Does that make sense? You're all looking at me like, all right, it's getting weird. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to show you how an ideogram is done. You guys are going to have to listen carefully. Make sure my sound is up. You guys have to listen carefully. So what I do, I like to repeat the coordinate. I like to repeat it like 3 times. It just, for me, it just sort of sinks it into my subconscious. So I really like to verbalize and say the coordinate 3 times. On the 3rd time, generally, I go ahead and I make my ideogram. So you'll hear me repeat, you'll hear me say the coordinate out loud. You don't have to do this if you're around people and stuff's going on, but I like to repeat out loud the coordinate. I whisper it if I have to, but I really do like to say, verbalize the coordinate when I'm getting ready to do my ideogram. So here's how it works in action. Ready? 150-131. So it was that fast. I'll play it again. Alan, can you see now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. That probably makes a big world of difference.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it does.
Okay, talk about flying blind. Yeah, all right. 150-131. So literally 1 second. It's just a doodle.
Pam,
yeah.
I've tried to do ideograms. I just, I read Indigo, says that, he feels like a jerking on his hand and stuff. And,
okay.
And, can you talk a little bit about that, that transition? Because I find it challenging.
Well, I'll tell you how I learned it, and then I'll tell you how I fixed it. So I used to be like a deer in headlights. I would write the coordinate and then I'd just freeze, and I couldn't make an ideogram. I'd freeze up. I literally was like a deer in headlights. I'd be like, and Paul would make me take a confusion break. And I would do it, I don't know how many times, until finally I was like, just scribble something. It doesn't matter, just scribble something. But I was first trained in the other method, and the other method, Lynn Buchanan and Lori Williams teach, is they have a specific sort of doodle that means something. So this little squiggle means water. This
Yeah, I tried that too.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
you try to memorize all these different
Yes.
squiggles. Yes.
you try to memorize them. They'll do
It
like
didn't work.
practice runs over.
I have a book full of those things.
Oh yeah. And they will do drills and try to drill it into their head. And supposedly when it's time to make your ideogram, you know, your subconscious is going to give you the right squiggle lines. I would freeze up every single time. I'd sit there and stare at it and then try to analyze it. And that act of analyzing it throws you right out of your intuitive head. It immediately puts you into analytical mode, which I'm like, that's wrong, because that's exactly what we're not trying to do. So right out the gate, if you try to force an ideogram and then analyze it and go, well, it looks like this thing, you're going to struggle. Whatever Ingo said about it pulling on him, you know, some people get freaked out because they think it's like automatic writing or something. I don't feel like anything's ever pulled on me. You know, I just make a crazy squiggle. And it's spontaneous, and I don't worry about what it looks like. In fact, most of mine end up looking kind of similar. They almost always start with 2 loops, because that's what I'm comfortable with, probably. So I just make a squiggle, and it's totally spontaneous. I don't think about what it looks like. I don't worry about what it looks like. I just let it fly.
Pam does, I'm sorry, I was just really curious.
Yep.
Do both methods suggest doing the, you know, the same type of time frame given to it, like 1 second?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. Both methods still, it's a quick,
Just
very quick, instant thing. Yep. And some people, you know, I don't want to bash the other method because some people do have success with it. Obviously, Lynn Buchanan's a great viewer, so obviously it works for him. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I know it does work for him. It just hung me up. I couldn't get past it. And then when I found out that there was another way and it was totally spontaneous and you just worried about unfolding it later, that totally freed me up to being able to move forward and not get stuck on the ideogram. So that's the way I teach it. That's the way I would prefer you. But if you have your, you know, if you want to do the other method, you guys are welcome to, obviously. But I recommend a free flowing, let it be whatever it is. And we'll sort it out later. That's how I approach the ideogram. So that takes a lot of the pressure off. It keeps you in your intuitive brain and doesn't throw you over into the analytical side. And hopefully, like me, it won't freeze you up, because I would just freeze and not be able to make it. I would avoid taking the coordinate because I didn't feel like I was ready to do the ideogram. So, so what happens is, as you saw, you write the coordinate, and when you're done writing the last number, then you just let the ideogram happen. So you write the coordinate. When you hit that last number, then you just go. Like there's no time in between. Try not to think about it. You just go from that last letter, that last number, to go ahead with the ideogram. Okay. Everybody good on the ideogram? Because it's important. It's important. And there's been a battle raging on what's the right way and that. And I hate to take sides, but I have to say, you know, this one really opened things up for me and helped me move forward. So that's the way I teach it. Okay. Gestalt. So what is a gestalt? And I hate this definition. I actually would prefer to find a different definition. Okay, a unified whole, a configuration pattern, organized field having specific properties that can't be derived from the sum of its individual parts. It's kind of a summary. It's kind of a summary. So I'm going to show you what these gestalts are, and then what they might look like in a target. So these are the ones that you will hear and use. There's a couple that can be interchanged with other words, so I'm going to give you those too. This is one of those things where you want to take notes, take a screen grab, whatever, so that you have these gestalts. Okay. Structure. Structure to me is something that's got supports. So I am kind of literal with what I do structure. So for me, a structure is actually a structure. Something that's standing, it's got supports, it's built. So for me, a structure is something that actually has some sort of supports, and it's a man-made built thing. Okay. The other word that can be used instead of structure is man-made. Now, as you can imagine, there's a lot of things that are going to fall under man-made. So maybe I will be feeling my ideogram and come up with something that feels like canvas. I'm going to call that man-made. This is not necessarily a structure, but it's man-made. So there's all kinds of different materials and things that you're going to come across that are going to be obviously man-made, but they're not necessarily a structure. So I do use structure for some sort of something, like I said, that's got supports, a building of some sort, or something like that. Everything else for me usually falls in the man-made category. Land. Some people use nature and land interchangeably. I usually use nature more for like plants and trees and vegetation and that kind of thing. But land for me is the feeling of solid of land. Water. Any kind of liquid is going to fall under the water gestalt. Snow, vapor, gas, oil, any kind of liquid is actually going to fall under the water gestalt. Space, that's air or something feeling spacious or something actually in space. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Motion, my favorite gestalt. Motion, something moving, anything moving. But I'm going to show you the difference between there's a wind blowing a bush and some major sort of motion going on at the target. So I'll show you the difference there in a minute. Biological, anything with a heartbeat. Anything with a heartbeat is biological. Okay, I'll show you what these look like. So this is an example of a biological target. Now, there's obviously land there and water. So there's land and water. But the focus, the important aspect of this target is the little girl and the horse. And so your subconscious will know that. And your subconscious, if it's behaving, will give you that gestalt of biological. You'll probably get the gestalt of land and water as well. But we hope that it will give you, we hope that it will give you biological. So this is what, like I said, just because the other gestalts are present, we want to be able to distinguish what's important, what's the important part of this target. Okay. Motion. Motion. My favorite gestalt. So anything that's moving that catches your eye, but in this case, motion's important. It's an important aspect to this target. So motion would be a big deal in this sense. It's a big part of what this target is, motion. Okay. Space. Space. When the space gestalt comes up, usually it's because there's a feeling of vastness, big sky, or there's something up in the air. Or you could actually be in space. But generally when space comes up, it's because there's something up in the air that's surrounded by space, or there's that feeling of vast openness, some feeling of big sky or big openness or some sort of space. So I've seen space come up in a target where they were actually indoors, but it was humongous. It was like huge. And so it was coming out as space. It was coming out as space because their subconscious was trying to tell them there's this huge amount of space there. Okay. I will say this. I haven't done it. I did it last month. I haven't done it in the longest time, and I finally gave them a hot air balloon target last month. What's always funny about that is the people who are afraid of heights see nothing except for a wicker basket. That's all they'll see is a wicker basket. And people who are not afraid of heights will start describing colors and space and flying and how much fun, and everybody else will just be in the bottom of the basket clinging to it. So you're going to learn so much about yourselves from the way you react to every target. And I will say this, every single target, every single one of you is going to have a different experience of the same target. So it's a completely unique experience that each one of you will have, completely unique to you. Even if you're all at the same target, you're all going to experience it through your own lens. And that's what makes going through sessions so much fun and so interesting. And you guys never cease to surprise me, but you will learn a lot about yourself and the way your brain works and the way your subconscious mind works by how you react to different targets. Water. You can get we'll talk about this in a minute, but you can get different forms of water in one ideogram. So you can get water twice if there's two different types of water. So if, in this case, there's a waterfall and then there's still water, but if there was water below and then there was snow on the mountain behind it, something like that, you might get water twice in your ideogram because it's two different forms. Natural. This is a good example of natural, nothing around except for nature. Okay. Man-made or structure. That's a structure. Okay. You would get a water gestalt here, potentially space, but hopefully you would get structure. Okay, so that's the fun part. Now comes the part where students start to get a little confused. We call this the A-B process, A-B process. And this is where we're going to start unzipping that ideogram. So remember, it's like a zip file, and we're going to unzip it. So this is the process that we use to start unzipping our zip file, our ideogram. Okay. Now, I have to say, you know, I will tell you guys stories throughout to keep things interesting, but for me, the first time that I felt something in my ideogram was just a big moment. Like, I'll still never forget it as long as I live, actually, because I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I learned something else cool, and I'm like, no, this is the coolest thing. And then I kept going, no, this is the coolest thing. But my first coolest thing was the ideogram. My first coolest thing was the ideogram when I actually felt something by running my pen over it. It was the most exciting thing ever that actually happened. But not so much that it happened, but that it also happened to be at the target. So I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So for me, it was squishy. It felt squishy, and there was water there. And I was like, this is bizarre, but this is the coolest thing ever. And you get used to it. You get used to it, and you get all kinds of sensations coming off of your ideogram that are going to lock you into contact with the target. So, at IRVA.
Can I ask a question, Pam? Just for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you can't, you didn't kind of get the feel the first time you did it, do you write the coordinates again and do another?
Nope.
Okay.
I will teach you how to do it. I air trace mine, and I can air trace it as many times as I want to. I just keep air tracing it, but I'll show you that in a second. Well, let's go through the ideogram first, and then I'll tell you, well, let me tell you about aperture, because if I don't, I'll forget. So IRVA has a magazine called Aperture, and there's a reason we call it Aperture. So the reason we call it Aperture is because a remote viewing session operates something like a camera aperture. So in stage 1, which we're learning now, the aperture is mostly closed. So it's only allowing in like a pen light of of light, just this little tiny opening, and it's allowing a little pin light of light in. And this is what we call signal. So your connection with the target is called signal. So in stage 1, that aperture is just barely open, and it's just allowing in a little bit of signal. And the longer you're in session, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, the more and more and more open that aperture becomes. And so it starts letting in more and more and more signal. So it's kind of like a little trickle in the beginning, and then, you know, it's a full on, the hose is on. So always think of that when you're in stage 1, is that remember that the aperture is barely open and you're just receiving the very basic little bit of signal. And the longer you're in session, the more and more that's going to open up. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So A/B process. So there are 2 parts to the A process. 2 parts, and this is where students always forget. And I'm trying to find a way to make that not happen. I haven't found it yet. There's got to be a way to teach this so that you guys never ever forget. But part 1 and part 2. So there's 2 parts to the A process. One is you're going to describe the motion your pen took on the page. What you'll see in a second. Describe the motion your pen took on the page. And then 2, how does it feel? How does it feel? Okay. And then B is you're going to name the gestalt based on whatever you felt. You're going to guess. If you don't know, you're going to guess. We actually have a category called the wild ass guess. WAG. We call it the WAG. Well, I don't know. I'm just going to make a wild ass guess. I'm going to say water. And that's okay. We even have one called unknown. If you really are having commitment problems, you can call it unknown, unknown, unknown. But let me show you what this looks like on paper. Okay. So this is a little demo. This is a little demo session. So you can see I've got no set asides, no nothing going on up here, but I've got my header. I've got the coordinate, and here's my ideogram. Now, there's 2 different ways to approach the ideogram. And this is why I'm doing this, that you guys can record. You guys can go back and listen to this recording. Okay, so I do it all in one pass. I make this ideogram, and I divide it up into sections. So you're going to see that I've divided mine up into 4 sections, and I'll show you where and how that works on paper. Some people will do the coordinate, do an ideogram, and there's only one gestalt in there. And then they'll do another one, make another ideogram, and there's one gestalt in there. So you can do it either way. So 1 ideogram per gestalt, or you can do one big one and break it up into sections. Did I lose you guys yet? Okay. And as we start going forward, you can repeat the ideogram as many times as you want to. Whether you have 1 gestalt in there or 3 or 4, doesn't matter, but you can continue to repeat, especially when we get into real complex type targets. You can repeat the ideogram as many times as you need to pull out all of the gestalts. I will say that your first target that I give you guys this week is going to have 2 gestalts. That's it. I give you very basic targets in the beginning so that there's only 2 gestalts in there. And hopefully you could repeat the ideogram over and over, and hopefully your subconscious would give you the same gestalts over and over. It'll go, still water. Nope, water again, water. That's what we want to happen. That's what we want to happen. Your subconscious to keep going, nope, it's still water. You can do this as many times as you want. I'm going to keep giving you water. So I divided my ideogram up into 4 sections. And you see the numbers. So A1, curve up and loop. So, oh man. Curve up and loop, curve up and loop. That's describe the motion the pen took on the page, right? Describe the motion the pen took on the page. So it curved up and loop. Curve up and loop. That's what I wrote. Okay. Now, what's it feel like? So you may get an impression while you make the ideogram. I don't. Some people do. I air trace mine. So I just go right above the paper and I just keep feeling it until I feel something. I just kind of keep going over it until I feel something. So you can actually touch the page if you want to. Some people put their finger on there and feel it. I always just air trace with my pen until I feel something. You could just put your pen there and rest it there and just see what's it feel like. What's it feel like? Ask yourself, what does this feel like? But I tend to air trace. I'm sort of obsessive. Like I go over it and over it until I feel something. So in the beginning, you're going to think this is crazy. How am I supposed to feel something? I force myself into an answer, soft or hard. If I really don't know, I just force myself into an answer. If I had to stab it, make a stab guess at it, what would I say? Would I say it's hard or would I say it's soft? That's how I led myself into it, actually. So I would just force an answer. All right, I don't know. I'm going to say soft. And then, of course, I started feeling it. I did start feeling it. And then I started feeling the difference. And then you start feeling all kinds of things. And we'll talk about what an ideogram could possibly feel like and what it's not going to feel like. Okay. So I got soft and I decided to call it a biological. So A1, I described the line. Second part of A is to describe what it feels like. And then B1 is my guess at the gestalt. Okay. A2, I took another section, angle back and up to a curve. Angle back and up to a curve. So that's this part. This part. So I feel this part now, feeling this part, just feeling that part. And I said scratchy. This feels scratchy to me. Scratchy. Scratchy. And I called it a man-made. A3, across to a point. So that's this part. I called that smooth, also man-made. B3, A4, angle up and across, angle up and across. So you don't have to be perfect with your description of the line, but you do want to just try to describe the motion the pen took on the page. Okay, I called that soft, and then I guessed it biological. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. We're almost there for tonight. Okay. We almost made it through stage 1. Woohoo! Okay. So your feeling word should be, first off, I want one word. I don't want a string of words. I don't want you to give me a whole bunch of them. A lot of people try to give me a whole bunch of words. Like, I really want one word, one. It's going to be a texture. Okay, it's going to be a texture. So soft or hard or smooth or bumpy or gritty or scratchy, solid. Trying to think of the common one. Those are some of the more common ones. Sticky, slippery. So it's a tactile texture is what we're after. So we don't want pink, we don't want green. We want a tactile type word. So like I said, hard or soft or smooth or bumpy or solid.
Pam?
Yep.
At this stage, what do you do if all of a sudden you see green?
And you will. You probably will. Some of you probably are going to have colors and different things start popping in. So that's what happens in stage 2. When you get to stage 2, you just start letting it rip and let all that stuff come in. But we're trying to teach your subconscious right now to stay in structure and not, beat the horse out of the gate. So
do you acknowledge it anyway, or you just beat it back to submission in your head?
I beat them back. I kind of hang on to them and beat them back. I try to beat them back, actually, because it's not really an AOL. So,
right.
So for those who don't know what an AOL is, I guess we might as well start that discussion right now. Because some of you are going to get it. Go ahead.
Yes. So, and I'm not sure if I'm jumping or just.
It's okay.
Before you go on to that, how many of the textures, kind of descriptive words like that, do we end up roughly coming up with?
So remember, I just want one.
Oh yeah, but I mean, like you've got you did.
So I divided my ideogram up into 4 sections. And it's kind of a natural intuitive process. This is where the intuitive starts coming in, is you'll just get a sense of where it breaks or where it feels different.
So it might not be 4 parts?
Might not be 4, might be 2 for you.
Okay, got it.
And like I said, it might be 1. Some people just do 1 per gestalt. They just do 1 and then they get 1 gestalt. And then they do another one and they get another gestalt. You could get 1, you could get 2, you could get 3. But it's an intuitive process. You'll just feel where it feels like there's a break for you, where it feels like it changes or it feels different.
Okay.
That's totally the intuitive part of it.
Okay.
And even though I said your structure is important, there's still not really a right way or wrong way to break up your ideogram. It's an intuitive thing. Now, back to what might happen. Some of you could get an AOL right away. So you could get a texture. Let's just say you do get water. You might flash on a lake. Automatically, I see a beautiful lake. This is a problem. And a lot of you are going to love it and you're going to hang on to it. You're going to take that lake with you going forward. And I call that buying the used car from, I call that the used salesman. Don't buy the used car and bring it home with you. But you will. So if something, a clear picture shows up in your head at this stage, in stage 1, it's what we call an AOL, analytical overlay, and generally it's your brain just filling in the blanks. It's your brain, your logic really wants to be in control here. So your brain's gonna jump in and go, oh, I know what that is. And it's gonna throw a picture at you. And the problem with that is you're gonna believe it. It's not a problem if you don't believe it, but it's a problem if you believe it. So anything that you see that you could identify in stage 1 is an AOL. Anything that has a noun is a noun that you could identify, and stage 1 is going to be an AOL. So you're feeling something that feels like bark, and you see a tree. So you're going to write AOL tree. And you're going to write it right here, right off to the side. Everything happens on this side of your paper, as you can see at this stage. So if you get an AOL, I want you, wherever you see it, wherever it happens, I want you to put parentheses, AOL, and then whatever it was you saw. And then you go right back into your structure. So this is what I talk about the structure helping you, is that every time you fall out of your structure, you go right back into it. So you probably will get some AOLs, some of you. Some of you could even get AIs. I got them like crazy when I first started. I'd feel wind blowing in my face. I'd feel all kinds of crazy sensations right out the gate the minute I touched my pen to the ideogram.
What are AIs, Pam?
An AI is, and that's something we talk about in stage 2, but it's a physical reaction to the target. It's generally a physical reaction. So you may literally feel water splashing on your face, or wind blowing in your face, or some sort of physical reaction. If you guys have that, I want you to write AI and write what it was. What we don't want you to do is have a whole bunch of things happening in your mind that you don't write on your paper. We don't want you to have all of these things flashing around in your head that you're not writing down. So especially if you're seeing images or seeing scenes or you're seeing things, we really want to make sure that you write them down. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to hang on to it, and then it's going to influence the whole rest of your session because you're hanging on to it. But if you write it down, then you have an easier go of letting go of it and getting back into your structure. Does that make sense? It will make a lot of sense when you start doing your sessions. Okay. Let me see. I think, yeah, that's stage 2. So this is an example of me continuing on. So I decided to do get out of the way. I decided to do it again. So I repeated, whenever you start a new page, you're going to write the page number up at the top and you're going to circle it. Trust me on this. If you ever have 12 pages and you drop them, you really want to have your session numbered properly. Some people like to put the coordinate. You don't have to. Some people like to put the coordinate there and then put page 2. But it's really important that you put the page number and circle it at the top of your page. So I repeated the coordinate, and I went and did a new ideogram, and I went through this process again. This time I got 3 different gestalts. I don't tend to do that as much in simple targets, but I do it in complex targets, because I feel like the more gestalts I have going in to work with, the better off I am getting a footing on my session later. So I like to have a bunch of gestalts to work with, but it's not going to be as important for you guys in this first target, where there's only going to be 2. There's only going to be 2, I promise you that.
Pam, when you said you repeated the target, and then you repeated your idiom, did you do a new one?
So yeah, so I repeat, this is the same coordinate.
Same coordinate. And did you intentionally do the same?
Nope, I let it be whatever it was.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah, they don't need to match. They don't need to look like anything. They don't need to look like the other one. They can be completely independent and unique. I have a student, you know, you guys, some of you know Joni, and she has never been able to break this bad habit of looking at her ideogram and deciding it looks like something. And then she incorporates that into her session. So I've been trying so hard to break her of that. She'll go, that looks like a horse's head to me. There must be a horse in my session. I'm like, stop it. Stop doing that.
And when I did this a few years ago,
Yeah.
and that's how the person that was, it was a video that I saw, it the program, and that's how he was teaching it,
Okay.
is to look at that. And so that's why I'm just like, oh my God, this is so different from what I learned.
Yeah, no wonder. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a bad habit. That is a bad habit, because it puts you in analytical mode and gets you out of intuitive mode. So you start trying to look at it and analyze and think instead of feel. We want you to feel your way. So we want you to feel your way. We don't want you to look at it and analyze your way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's really important from the method that we teach is to get into your feelings stuff right out the gate. So we want you to feel the ideogram, get the sensations. It's funny because I wrote AOL horse and I did not even know that there was that there. That's so funny. I'm like, oh my God, it says AOL horse right there. That's hilarious. My sub's still on top of things. Because I swear I did not know that was there when I gave you that example. That's funny. It's good to know my sub is still on top of it. But as you can see, this one I broke into, it's kind of cut off up here, but I broke it into 3 sections instead of 4 this time. But it really, it'll be a natural, you'll just be going along and you'll be running your pen over it, and you'll just feel some sort of a natural divide somewhere. And that's where you break it. You just, some people will actually draw a little hatch mark there where they broke it. And you can do that if you want to. You can just draw a little hatch mark there to show that's where you broke it. But for me, it's just a feeling thing. It's just, you know, you'll just feel, it'll just feel different. And so you sort of just um, let it break itself up. And it's intuitive. Okay. And that's where we're going to stop for tonight. What you see there is at the bottom of the page going into stage 2. So stage 2 is my favorite, actually. I love stage 2. I love teaching it. I love doing it. I love stage 2 very much. So I always just, you know, suffer my way through stage 1 so I can get to stage 2. Stage 1 always just felt like a lot of process to me, and I always felt like I was holding the horses back, trying to stay in structure and try to just get the minimum of what I was supposed to get and not the other stuff. And I always felt like it was a little bit of a struggle. But once your subconscious gets in line with this is what I'm supposed to do, and gets with the program, you'll have less and less problems with that as you go. It'll sort of get with the program and understand how you're supposed to do it. And like I said, you know, I'm going to put a target up probably tomorrow, and I really am not going to be concerned or looking so much at whether you identified the gestalts right. I'm going to be looking at your structure to make sure your A's and B's are right. Just so that, like I said, you don't learn a bad habit and take that bad habit with you forward. So we don't want that. So that's really what I'm going to be looking for in your first feedback session. Is we're going to just be going over and making sure you've got your A's and B's and your structure looks good. I'm going to, this is funny, it's funny and not funny. I have something called a cheat sheet that I typed out on paper. So it just shows you where everything goes on the page so that you're not in your head trying to remember where things go on your page. I've had students print it out and write on the page. And I'm like, no, the whole class did that one time. And I'm like, no, hold it on the wall in front of you. Don't write on it. It's not for you to write on. It's for you to look at and use as a template. But you're not supposed to be writing on it. So just so you guys know, when I post the cheat sheet up there, it's a model just so that you can see where things go and you don't have to think about it when you're in your session trying to worry about feeling things. So I don't want you all in your head trying to figure out where you write stuff on your page if you have a model in front of you so you can see it and it reminds you what you're supposed to do. That for me took a lot of the pressure off because I'm like, does it go on the right side or the left side? What side am I supposed to do? It all seemed very confusing to me in the beginning. So if you have a nice little cheat sheet in front of you, it will tell you where things go. But like I said, that's not meant for you to write on. It's just a model for you to follow. Okay. Because I was so shocked when everybody turned their thing in on top of the cheat sheet. So that's not what it's for. Just to look at. Okay. Any questions before we go? Are you guys massively confused or no? Hopefully not.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
I have a question, Pam, and this might be for next week. You know, if you have to stop and you're in a session, and you have to walk away, how long is too long where you have to restart?
I've seen people restart, days later.
Oh, okay.
I've seen people restart days later. So,
Okay.
so if you have to take a break, you write end or you write break on your page. You write in the middle. I do it in the middle, right here.
Okay.
I'll write break and the time.
Okay.
And then when you come back, you write resume and the time. And then you just start up again. So how do you start up again? If you've taken a break, you might want to just take the coordinate and do another ideogram and start there. So you might want to start over. Or you can just start probing the ideogram that you already have. It's up to you.
Okay.
So Liz, what part are you massively confused about?
Well, I think it's because the way I learned it the first time, and then now this, it's just like totally
It's
different.
totally different.
Yeah, it's totally different. But again, that was like years ago. But it's like there was on the sheet that we printed out, it was like a box that you did the ideogram. You couldn't go outside of the lines, and based on that, whatever it looked like, you analyzed it, and then you just went off of that, and you detailed what you felt, how it feels, that kind of thing, as you did on this. But it's not it's structured totally different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not so
Morehouse.
much confusing. It's just different,
Was
structured different.
that Dave Morehouse?
It's been years ago. I don't remember. I have to look it up, but I'll let you know.
It's either, that's
But
either.
he was like in the military.
Yeah.
He did this, I mean, years and years and years from being in the military,
Yeah.
and was good at it, and I mean, excellent. And so I thought, okay, I want to try this. And
Yeah.
it was difficult. It was lengthy, but it was, it worked
Okay.
for, but
I'm just curious who that is. It's either Ed Dames or Dave Morehouse, one of the two.
okay. I'll let you know. I still have the printouts and all that I saved.
Okay. So everybody, look, there are different schools out there and there are different methods. There are definitely different methods. So you are going to see these different little variations. And some of them even have different names. They're little offshoots of CRV. So those who don't know, CRV is controlled remote viewing. It used to be called coordinate remote viewing, and then they changed it to controlled remote viewing because they literally used to give them coordinates of a geographical place. And then the guys started getting good at guessing based on what the coordinate was. Recognizing where that was in longitude and latitude.
Oh.
So they changed it to a random number that isn't that. And that's sort of how that translated. But yeah, you don't have to stay in a box. I don't want you to look at and analyze your ideogram. I want you to feel your ideogram and see how it translates for you.
Okay.
And like I said, you're going to make a guess at your gestalts. I might as well just say this to you now, even though your heads are full and about to explode. I might as well say this to you now, and I'll continue to repeat as we go forward. But remember the idea of the aperture. So if you, just because you get a gestalt early on, you may get a gestalt that's not correct, or you may miss one that say there's water there and you didn't get it in your gestalts, or there's biologicals there and you didn't see them in your first gestalts. That self-corrects as you go. So these things self-correct as you go through your session. So I don't want you to get hung up on thinking you have to nail your gestalts right out the gate and they have to be perfect, because I don't want you to get into that mindset of, oh my gosh, I have to get these gestalts perfectly right from right now, or it's going to mess up my whole session. It's not that way. It's fluid. It's fluid. And things are going to continue to change and grow and morph a little bit. Things that aren't there will hopefully fall away, and things that are there that you missed will start coming to your attention. And so I don't want you to get hung up on thinking, oh my gosh, I have to get these gestalts perfectly right, because it's fluid. Okay.
So Pam, like, are you like, will we eventually learn how to separate the intuition, the psychic intuition, from what we're doing here? I guess I'm confused.
You guys are still being intuitive. You're still being intuitive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I know it sounds like a dumb question, but I mean, this is like a different method of using that part of your brain, or?
Yeah. So, you know, in the beginning, when I first started playing with sessions and I didn't have any training, I could not tell you the difference between, I remember thinking a windmill was a tree and not being able to tell the difference, sketching it on my page and thinking, why in God's name would I use this if I can't tell the difference between a windmill and a tree? And that's because I never got through all the stages and got to the advanced part. And once you get to the advanced part, you know, you're back to getting all of those more clear impressions. But let me just give you my best description of how I perceive remote viewing.
Oh, and Pam, when you get a second, I mean, Devish Nick has been asking questions, and
okay, and I can't see her. Good.
Yeah. So she knows that, but there's something you know. So whenever you get a chance. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's good. Thank you. I will get you. So I use this example a lot because it's the only way I can sort of describe how I perceive, having worked with psychic information for a long time before I learned CRV, what's the difference, or how does it function? So for me,
I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
I know. So
Okay.
when I'm in psychic mode, sometimes I'll just flash on something. So let's say I flash on a white church. So in psychic mode, boom, I see a white church. I know it's a white church. I may even know it's a Methodist church. I don't know why, I just know it is, right? It came in that way. It's intuitive. I saw it clearly. I know what that thing looked like. It flashed and then it was gone. That's a typical way that you might get something intuitively, right? So problem with that is it's gone. And it's pretty hard to recall once it's gone. In CRV, once you build a connection with the target, and it's a slow, steady process, that's the part about it that makes it different, is it's a slow, steady process. But what happens is it's not just a visual process. It becomes a sensory experience and a 3D experience. So you're not just seeing a church. Now you're walking in, you can sit down. You can sit down in the church and you can see who's in there. You can walk outside, check out the outside of the building. You can go up in the air and look down. You can do all these things. Having more of I've taught a lot of that in my classes, so some of you may have those experiences because I've taught it from my experience with CRV. But you can interact with the target in a 3D sort of way. So not only can you see a house, you can walk up the front steps and open the door. Put your hand on the doorknob and feel that door and open the door.
You're talking in psychic mode or CRV mode?
CRV mode.
Okay.
I've taught a lot of you how to do it in psychic mode, but that's because of my CRV training. I never would have known how to do that without CRV training. So, so it becomes a full-on sensory experience. Now, you may or may not know what the target is when you get to the end. You could spend 2 hours describing a target and still have no clue what it is, but have described it really well. Where somebody else who's reading your session may know what it is, but you yourself may feel totally confused and have no idea what you're describing or what you're talking about or what you're doing. That's really common. I have a lot of targets that I did a really good job on. No clue. I had no clue what I was talking about. I was just describing, and not fully grasping what it was. So that little clip, the little clip that's on my webpage on the front where I do a little video demo of remote viewing for the Oprah network, my brain did not tell me that was a playground in any way. I had no idea that was a playground. I'm describing a playground. I'm describing children playing and laughing, and I've described being up on something and looking over the edge. I had no clue it was a slide. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I was up on something looking over.
Funny you brought that up. I saw that just this morning.
Yeah.
And you did like, I mean, you were like on point. I'm like, whoa.
I was on point, but I didn't know
But you didn't know what it was.
I had no idea what it was. I really
I
did
remember
not
that.
know.
Yeah, it's a green
And the green, and I'll tell you what I thought it was. I'll tell you I thought, because I knew it was plastic and I knew it was green. I thought it was a trash can. And it was rounded. I'm like, it's rounded, it's green, it's plastic, and my brain's like, yeah, it must be a trash can. That's what I thought it was. Thank God I didn't say it was a trash can. But that's what I was thinking in my head. I really thought that's what it was. So a lot of times you're not going to know what you're describing. And it's okay. You don't have to. You don't have to. Some of my best sessions, I was totally confused and had no earthly idea what I was talking about. There's been a few sessions that I had a full-on experience. Like one, I was in a boat. I knew I was in a boat because I could feel water splashing up all around and the wind. And I just knew I was on a boat. I felt every inch of me felt like I was on a boat. I knew I was on a boat. And I had another one, which I joke about all the time. That was one of Paul Smith's targets. And I was like, you should never give this girl a donut shop. But he gave me a donut shop, and I knew I had that one nailed. I was just like, but it wasn't just visual. I could smell everything. I could hear people talking. I could hear the cash register. I was looking through like a glass. I knew I was looking through some sort of glass display case. But the thing that really got me was the sound. I heard the sound of those oven racks coming in and out of the oven. And it was a very distinct sound that I've only heard in the bakery. So I knew, and that sweet, sweet smell, that overwhelming sweet smell, I just knew I was in a donut shop. But it was because it wasn't an AOL, because it was all these sensory things that were coming together to tell me what I was experiencing. But there are times I don't have a clue. There are times where I honestly couldn't tell you what the target was to save my life. I don't know. I'm just describing and just going along with the process. So a lot of intuitives will struggle with that because they like to identify things, and it bothers them to not be able to identify things. But if you can let go of that need and just go with the process, and learn to trust, you'll be amazed at how well you describe things without having any clue what you're describing. Okay, who was back here wanting to ask? Where are you? There you are. Okay, go. You have to unmute yourself.
Well, she put it in chat.
Oh, she put it in chat. Okay.
Devishnik
Okay.
had 2 questions.
Okay. Yes, when I share the screen, I cannot see the chat. All right. Let me go back here. Okay. The right pen. Okay. I don't know if there is a right pen, but we do recommend black. We do recommend black. And it translates better when you're scanning your sessions so that we can see them. I just use regular old big black pens myself. Do I keep all of my sessions? I try to, yes. I do keep them. I try to keep them neat and paper clipped together, and I do try to keep them. I recommend for you guys, a lot of those I keep because I have to, because they're official cases or things that I worked on. But even my practice sessions, if I have a really good session, I recommend you guys keep those, like my donut shop one. And the reason too being is because you can pull them out when you're having a bad day, and you can look at it and remember, one, it's a great thing for like a portfolio, but it will make you feel good when you're having a slump or you're having a bad day, to go, hey, I can do this. Remember that session I did and I nailed that thing? That will help you.
I have a question, Pam.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you've already had an experience like that where you are like in a place and you're looking around and you're seeing stuff, and would you list that in your structure as an analytical overlay?
Generally, hopefully you're not going to have that quick in stage 1. You might, but yes, if you're having it that fast in stage 1, you would write it as an AOL.
Okay, yeah, it's only happened
a
few times.
We want you to get to that stage, but generally that's in stage 2 or 3.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions before we go? And you guys can always put questions up in the blog too, if they come up and you're trying to do your sessions or something and you have questions. Don't be shy about going ahead and throwing them up there in the class blog, and I'll do my best to answer you guys too if anything comes up that you have questions about. And then of course we'll go over your sessions next week, and then you guys can ask me questions, and we'll be off and running. Okay. All right. Like I said, stage 1 for me is not my favorite, because it's so much process, and I feel like I'm always holding back the horses. But as soon as we get to, it's important to build those foundation building blocks from the beginning properly so that you have a strong foundation to go forward with. So it is important to take those steps and follow the structure carefully. And then in stage 2, you guys can just let all of the intuitive stuff fly. So it will happen in stage 2. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome, guys. And
Thank you, Pam.
we'll attach the cheat sheet up there. However I do that, I will put that cheat sheet up there for you so that you have it. And then, like I said, if you have questions or comments or anything, put them up there in the class blog and I'll be sure to answer stuff up there.
Sounds good.
Okay. And you can rewatch this if you need to.
Most definitely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, everybody. Bye, guys.